I'm joined by anti-war activist Brian Becker from the Answer Coalition. He's on the line from Washington. Morning to you. President Obama's now hinting, isn't he, at a limited action in Syria. No boots on the ground, as he's putting it. Has he buckled here? What do you think's actually happening?
Well, the promise that President Obama is making to the American people is that all the bleeding will be on the Syrian side. We will strike them, we will bomb them, we will drop cruise missiles. But don't worry, Americans, just stay shopping because we won't put boots on the ground. That's just a euphemism for all the bleeding will be done on the other side. There's no evidence. The American people actually are completely against this. 90%, according to the polls, don't want it to happen. There's no credible evidence. Unlike Cameron, who had to take the case to the British Parliament, Obama's doing everything to avoid even a basic debate to get congressional authorization. No debate whatsoever. Even George W. Bush had to get congressional authorization before he launched his war of aggression. This is the failure of democracy in America as Obama goes on this reckless and dangerous course.
Is there anything you saw or heard earlier on from President Obama or John Kerry that even put any seeds of doubt into your mind that this should be the right thing to do, some sort of intervention here, because of on a humanitarian ground?
Yeah, there's no change at all. The American people don't believe it. John Kerry appears as a fraud. His arguments appear as lies and deception and demagogy. There's no credible evidence. He condemned the Syrian foreign minister for delaying the allowing weapons inspectors into Syria, which of course Syria did not do. They immediately allowed them in. But today, John Kerry said whatever the weapons inspectors say, that's irrelevant because their mission is not to put blame on some side or another side. The United States is talking out of both sides of its mouth. The Obama administration is isolated. They're going to carry out a reckless and dangerous war if they should go ahead. The people in this country are in the streets. All over the country there are demonstrations saying, don't do it. No more wars in the Middle East.
But as it stands tonight, what's your gut feeling? Do you think it is going to go ahead?
I think there's tremendous pressure right now on Obama to go ahead, but he recognizes, I believe, that the whole fate of his administration, the fate of his legacy hangs in the balance. There's no such thing as a limited missile attack against Syria. There's bound to be a blowback for that. There's bound to be an engaged commitment. The United States won't just strike military targets now and then say, okay, we've done our duty, we've had a symbolic attack. This means the United States is committed once again, long-term, to another war in the Middle East. And I think the whole Obama administration's presentation, its historical presentation, and it cares about that, hangs in the balance right now. The American people are really angry. They're telling the Obama administration, don't do it.
Well, John Kerry again tonight referred to publicly available evidence stating his case, and yet he doesn't speak too much either, does he, about the numerous online videos allegedly showing Syria's rebels committing atrocities, even allegations of them using, indeed, chemical weapons. He doesn't choose to mention that, does he?
It's such flimsy evidence. We know, and the international community knows, that the rebels have used chemical weapons. Who had an interest in the use of chemical weapons? Assad is winning the war. He has public backing. The rebels cannot win without foreign intervention, U.S. intervention in particular. They know that if chemical weapons are used, that's a trigger to launch the Western intervention. The only way Assad can lose would be if the West intervenes militarily. So who used the chemical weapons? Clearly not the Assad government. They're not suicidal. They were winning the war. This is a staged provocation. That's what we're witnessing.
If some sort of intervention goes ahead, of course, Iran is Syria's key ally and Hezbollah is another. Let's talk about the possible ramifications, this blowback that you were talking about. What could happen? Even if it's a short-term wrap across the knuckles, as Obama said.
Well, of course, according to the UN Charter, any member state has no right to attack another member state, except in the case of imminent self-defense. That's what Article 51 of Chapter 7 means. It means you have a right to defend yourself. Syria says it will retaliate. Legally, according to the UN Charter, it has such a right. The United States is not threatened by Syria, but Syria is threatened by the United States. Iran, Syria's principal ally, says that they will attack Israel. If that were to happen, is it even conceivable that this war will not escalate, that this will not become a major a regional conflagration. The stakes are so high. The Obama administration is doing this for purely opportunist purposes and purely in order to do what it says it's not doing, which is designed to topple another independent government in this oil-rich, resource-rich, and geostrategically important part of the world.
Talking about how this may happen, if it does happen, an intervention, I was talking to a British Conservative MP earlier on who was pro-it for humanitarian reasons. I said to him, well, how can you guarantee that there will be no collateral damage, innocent civilians? He says, well, it just goes with the territory. I mean, we're hoping, I guess, that if this does go ahead, these missiles are precise enough to purely target military installations, but there is going to be collateral damage, isn't there?
Of course, cruise missile diplomacy is not diplomacy. Cruise missiles are war. The U.S. is conducting a war. It's an illegal war. They have no idea what the so-called collateral damage is. But any person who dies in Syria when the U.S. carries out an unprovoked military operation, an unprovoked illegal military operation in contravention of international law, any person, whether they're civilian or soldier, those persons' deaths are actually war crimes. And the United States could be held before international bodies for carrying out an unprovoked war of aggression, the crime of breaking the peace, as we learned from Nuremberg. And so there's no such thing as no collateral damage. And we see in Iraq, they said it'll be clean. 1 million Iraqis died. 5,000 Americans died. But Bush and Rumsfeld and Cheney said, oh no, this will be fast. It'll just be against military targets. We should reject all of this and know from history, even recent history, that it's not true.
Brian Becker from the Answer Anti-War Coalition on the line from Washington, D.C. tonight. Thanks, sir.